Thank you, Ms. Mead. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I want to call to order the meeting of Beaumont City Council for Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, 6 p.m. here in City Council chambers. First of all, I want to acknowledge I was unfortunately unable to chair the meeting 2 weeks ago when our new councilors came on board. So it's nice to have a couple of faces in those empty chairs. So gentlemen, welcome aboard. I'm looking forward to working with you. And let's get started. We got a lot of work to do tonight. So thank you all for coming this evening. We begin with a land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all the first peoples of this land, whether it be a First Nation, Métis or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have an ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. We have this evening one proclamation this evening, which I'll get to at this point, which is Women's Entrepreneurship Day, November 19th, 2023. Whereas the City of Beaumont recognizes the important role that women have as leaders in the business and industry who contribute to our economy, our workforce, and our overall quality of life. And whereas women entrepreneurs are innovative and inspiring and work to make their communities stronger. And whereas pioneering businesswomen within Beaumont and across Alberta are sources of inspiration for us all. And whereas the City of Beaumont values a significant role of women in our society whose contributions are vital to creating a vibrant workforce and community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim November 19th, 2023 as Women's Entrepreneurship Day, City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 14th of November, 2023. All right. We have the adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any change to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two additions to the agenda. Both are attachments to item 6.3, the 2024 proposed municipal operating utility operating and capital budget presentation. Attachment 1 is the proposed budget document, and attachment 3 is the budget PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. Seeing no further amendments to the agenda, I'll ask for a motion of the council to adopt the agenda as amended. Member of council want to make that motion? Councilor Barnhart? Oh, hang on, I got your number there. There you go.
Yes, I'd be pleased to make that motion that the November 14th, 2023 council agenda be adopted with the addition of attachment 1 and attachment 3.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion before you to adopt the agenda? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Madam Clerk, any open forum this evening?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any registrations this evening.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Would you please put the consent agenda on the screen, please? I believe when we have it on the screen, I'm aware of potentially 1 or 2 items being taken off consent agenda. So I'll begin with the first on my screen. Councilor McCobb-Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask that we remove 6.5 naming of Park Centreville Park off the consent agenda, and we'll have a motion when we get to 6.5. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Newkirk. Steve, I see your button's on. You have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to remove item 6.4, pathway and crossing options from 63rd Street to Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further changes to the consent agenda from any other members of council? Seeing none, we have 2 items pulled off the consent agenda. I believe it's been revised on the screen. Thank you, Ms. Mead. Appreciate that. Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to read the motions that are being proposed for consent?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's item 5.1. It's the regular and organization council meetings from October 30, 2023. That council accept the minutes of the October 30th, 2023 regular and organizational council meeting as presented. Item 6.6, request for extension on amendments to the land use bylaw, that the bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19 land use bylaw in accordance with the summary table of changes as set out in attachment 3 to the September 2023 proposed land use bylaw amendments report be provided to council with the revised due date of June 30th, 2024. And the fourth item is the strategic plan third quarter update, that the November 14th, 2023 report, strategic plan update, third quarter report be received for information.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Discussion on the motion. to amend, sorry, I'll request a motion to amend consent agenda as presented. A member of council? Is that necessary, or I can just go to the vote? Madam Clerk?
We need someone to move the consent agenda.
Mr. Penrod? You're good to go.
Do I need to reread the items?
No.
Sure. Sure. So I move the approval of these 3 items as displayed for the consent agenda.
Perfect. Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. Put you on the spot there, but I figured I'd get you guys involved right away here. Seeing discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion. Thank you, Counselor. Council, would you please vote on the revised consent agenda on the screen before you? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda is the 6.1 Urban Agricultural Plan. We have presenters this evening. Please come to this table in front of us here. That'd be great. I'll get your mic on for you there. Hang on a second. Is that red light on there? Hang on. Okay, these are the first 2 buttons here. They're not working, Ms. Mead. Can you? Oh, hang on. It's been renumbered. There you go. Your microphone is on now.
All right.
Please state your name and your purpose here and begin your presentation, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Coralie Volker. I'm a long-range planner with the Planning and Development Department. I'm joined this evening by Johannes Wong, Manager of Long-Range Planning, Matthew Grattan, Senior Long-Range Planner, Helen Logren, and Jay Hewley of Intelligent Futures. We are in front of you today to present the Urban Agriculture Plan for Council's information. Before I hand it over to Helen and Jay to provide a presentation on the plan and how it came to be, I would like to thank the community and other members of administration and Tara Pombert for all the contributions to the creation of their plan. Their input and feedback have been instrumental to shaping the direction of this plan, and I hope that we see some agriculture within the future. With that, I will now hand it over to Intelligent Futures.
Thank you. The microphone is also very directional, so please speak right into it. It's sensitive, but it's straight on. Thank you.
I can do that. All
Awesome.
right. Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for having us this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. As Coralie had mentioned, my name is Helen Logren. I am a strategist with Intelligent Futures, and I'm joined here today by Jay Hewley, an analyst at Intelligent Futures as well. And we are delighted to present to you the final iteration of the Beaumont Urban Agriculture Plan. So tonight, it'll be a relatively light touch walkthrough, but what we're hoping to go through is a brief introduction to the project, planning direction overall for the project, as well as the process, and then a bit more about the plan overview and steps moving forward for the plan. So as many of you know, Intelligent Futures has been working with the city since late summer of 2022, since August of last year, to develop Beaumont's Urban Agriculture Plan. The intention of this plan is to provide strategic direction for implementing urban agriculture in Beaumont overall. When it comes to the direction to create this plan, this is a mandated requirement from the EMRB's Regional Agriculture Master Plan. Inside of that master plan, there is direction for all member municipalities to create urban agriculture plans, specifically those with urban or rural centers. But also, you might remember inside of your environmental master plan from 2019, there's also direction inside of that document to create an urban agriculture plan as well. With that in mind, I'm going to hand this over to Jay Hewley to walk you through a bit of the process.
To begin the planning process, we started by developing a guiding question of how might we develop actionable urban agriculture solutions that provide Beaumont with food, health, economic, social, and environmental benefits while mitigating negative externalities. The planning process started in August of 2022 and was developed over 2 phases. The first phase being more of an exploratory phase, looking to understand community context and the existing context in Beaumont with several phases of stakeholder engagement. The second phase looked to collaboratively developing the plan with the City of Beaumont staff members and bringing us to this final presentation today at the end of November. In terms of inputs into the urban agriculture plan, we look to the EMRB Regional Agriculture Master Plan as a starting point to provide the policy direction and guidance for plan development. We also look to leverage Beaumont's strong agricultural history and context here to inform the plan. We look to establish standards and plans such as the MDP land use bylaw and animal control bylaw, municipal priorities, as well as public feedback through the 2 stages of public engagement. So looking a bit further into the first phase of project understanding, we began to assess the policy in Beaumont and the Edmonton region. We heard from over 340 community responses in the first phase of public engagement to understand the current state and community aspirations. We looked to local opportunity and asset mapping to understand spatial opportunities within Beaumont, and looked to both surrounding municipalities in the region, as well as case studies on a provincial and national scale to understand best practices in urban agriculture. The second phase of the plan began with a strategic directions workshop with key staff members as well as community partners to understand the intended direction moving forward, which was then collaboratively drafted through a 2-day strategy sprint held with the municipal staff members. Following that, we led the second phase of public engagement, where we heard from 116 responses to ensure that there is alignment with the proposed plan direction with community aspirations. This was followed by internal circulation with city departments, as well as external review with the EMRB, as well as Alberta Health Services and member municipalities, bringing us to our final council presentation today. This is a snapshot from the second phase of public engagement, where we presented the 12 proposed actions of the plan. As you can see, there's over 70% strongly agree and agree approval for these actions. So largely seen large community support for the actions that we're proposing.
Thanks, Jay. And that brings us to today, the document that you have in front of you today. And so the urban agriculture plan really builds off of that agricultural heritage that Beaumont has. And so when it comes to ensuring that agriculture is celebrated, it's a celebrated pillar of Beaumont's heritage, and the city recognizes that the role that urban agriculture can play in enhancing the community's future. This document is one of the steps to help to ensure that, and one of the roadmaps to try to get there. And so when it comes to the document itself, there are 4 primary sorting functions within the document. And starting at the top is the most high level or broad. And as you move down the triangle, you have more detailed and implementation-based components. So when it comes, the first thing to consider are principles. Principles are a set of influences that are propelling the development of urban agriculture generally, not only locally, but also globally. And so these are things that the urban agriculture plan is both being influenced by, but is also influencing in the Beaumont context. So those principles include reconciliation, food security, community health, sustainable food systems, as well as climate change. Moving down the triangle, we then start to see other elements. Next up is the vision. The vision is intended to be the long-term outlook for urban agriculture in Beaumont itself. So the vision for the urban agriculture plan is that Beaumont is a nimble agricultural innovator and supporter, which empowers the community to engage in urban agriculture on public and private lands, and connects new local initiatives to Beaumont's rich agricultural heritage in a just and sustainable way. Urban agriculture and the whole food system are visibly integrated across the city, contributing to local food security and the economic, ecological, and social well-being of Beaumont. To reach this ideal vision, we needed to break this down a little bit further, which is where the role of the goals come in. If you have the document in front of you, I would just request that you look at page 12. And on starting with this goals section, you'll see that there's a series of 8 different goal areas. Those include food security, awareness, community, innovation, ecology, economy, agriculture, and regulation. For each of these goal areas, it's accompanied by a set of goal statements, as well as a series of policy statements and indicators, ways to track the progress towards that identified goal in the plan. The intention of these goal areas is both for current urban agriculture, but as future urban agriculture initiatives come forward to the city, they have a framework and/or a starting point to see how to evaluate those potential agricultural opportunities. Now, the meat of the plan can be found inside of the actions. If you're looking for them, they start on page 20. You'll see that there's a series of 12 actions identified in the plan. And there are two main types of actions. Understanding that urban agriculture is an extremely community-oriented has a community-oriented component that is very strong. We want to ensure that the actions that we chose, that are priority actions, help to set momentum to build more urban agriculture in Beaumont overall. Those priority actions that we've identified here include hiring an interdisciplinary plan coordinator, establishing an urban agriculture committee, investigating the feasibility and technical requirements for urban bee and hen programs, and lastly, creating public partnerships to deliver and promote agricultural education and awareness. These first 4 priority actions are intentional to build momentum for the remaining eight that are identified below. Inside of each of these actions that you find first on page 20, you'll see a series of 4 different elements. It starts off with a comprehensive description, followed by a rationale as to why it's included within the plan, as well as a completion or a progress indicator, and finally, a series of potential partners. This is the higher level overview of these actions, but however, Appendix A also lists a more detailed overview that you see on the right-hand side for each of the action areas as well. So as we start to implement these actions, some more components are built out for the implementers themselves. Lastly, we just wanted to mention a few steps going forward. So today we're recommending that this plan go forward as information. But once it does, we're hoping that the city of Beaumont will begin implementation of urban agriculture, begin tracking progress across the series of indicators that have been identified, and lastly, using the policy sections to evaluate future urban agriculture opportunities as they come forward to Beaumont. With that, we just want to say thank you to everyone, both for your input, for creating the plan, and for your time this evening. And we are open to questions.
Thank you very much. That was a very concise presentation on a very large, long, and very detailed report. Thank you very much. This time, open up questions from members of council for the residents before I ask for a motion to adopt presentation as information. Any questions from members of council this evening? Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilor Barnhart, followed by Councilor Cook, followed by Councilor Monkhouse-Swain. Steve, you have the floor.
Well, I wasn't gonna let the air go empty there, so I figured I would start off by
We
saying,
got about 12 minutes, so
right on.
let's go.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to share is just that you guys did a good job on the report, and it's easy to sit up here and say that to everyone who comes in front of us and presents. But what I appreciated about this report is, you know, kind of what you alluded to in the frames there, where the action items drove down into the, you know, here's how we're going to do it, and here's the timeline, and here's what we propose. You know, while I may not agree with everything in the report, it's well laid out and well put together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Well said. Councilor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much. Lots of really good work here. Councilor Van Newkirk is right. The report is very logical and it follows. I have a bit of sadness though, because I get to the part about the finances and realize that it's not being budgeted for the position. And you know, do all of this work and then it sits there, and I hope it doesn't sit there for too long. I don't want to put the presenter on the spot here, but I kind of want to ask the administration to explain that, because we've invested this much so far. So why are we not able to operationalize these recommendations? And starting with the very first one, I understand we're looking at a position, and I understand that it takes someone to be the champion for this. And we're all busy, and you're all busy, but I do get the impression that there's this isn't the only one that's kind of at that point, because this was to be an interdisciplinary coordinator. So I don't know if you're the right person to be asking that question, but you're there. So give it a shot or pass it on. And I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Through the mayor, I can try to give an answer, but I may have to defer to people who know a little bit more than I. I believe that there were just different priorities within the budgeting. And this might be something that doesn't happen in 2024, but maybe we're looking at it in 2025. But hopefully within administration, we can kind of pick off the low-hanging fruit on the side. But I will keep my answer short.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add to that? Because I think Mr. Schwartz might want to.
CEO Schwartz.
Yeah, I think, you know, the answer that's coming from me is, you've seen the budget. This was a very tough budget year. we look at council's strategic plan and the priorities, and while this is a wonderful plan and work that needs to be done, it's not, in my opinion, included in those top priorities. So if we were to fund some other staffing positions, which we don't have in the budget this year, it would likely go somewhere else. So we'll continue to watch this. As Coralie says, we'll do some low-hanging fruit and see when the opportunity presents itself to add that position into the budget.
Okay, so it's fair to say it's a budget discussion and something that
It certainly could be,
council may
yes.
have to consider again down the road, if not
Absolutely.
soon.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you again. And as someone who sat on the ramp, the regional agricultural master plan, I understand the importance of the economy, the ag economy, and feeding people is kind of number one. So our part in that, I think, is really important. And as we're not the main, the areas where agriculture should take place, but we certainly can support that. And anything we can do to move it ahead, I'm all for that. So thank you again for bringing this forward in such a clear way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor, and to my other councillors' points, great report. I think I love the fact that you guys we're even doing the urban agriculture master plan. I think it's an important part of our future, especially as to how we create sustainable communities. Food security is clearly a very real concern for many, and if we can integrate that into how we build out Beaumont, we'll be better off for sure. I echo Councillor Barnhart's points. I was excited to read the report, and there's a lot of great things, and then I was a little disappointed then at the end to see that we're pushing some of these timelines. I know administration kind of said, but do we have any idea as to what action items we will kind of be able to start on if we're not hiring the coordinator or anything like that?
Through the mayor. That is a good question. Urban agriculture is one of those things that really does need someone who consistently nurtures it. So it's hard to want to say that we can start this action if we can't keep up with it, because that's how trust within the community unfortunately withers away. So I want to hope that we can create something and kind of have a band-aid solution, but I don't know exactly the right answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, we don't let this go and we do kind of come up with a plan as to how we can kind of keep on this. Especially as on there, it was highlighted that Beaumont and Egg initiatives are often working in silos and we need to work better together. So hopefully that doesn't become the norm and we are able to kind of come together with this. Is there not some things that we can do, especially boulevard gardening? We're not, creating anything here. We're not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of communities that do that already. Is that not something that we could move up in some of the action plan pieces? I see it's really low.
So unfortunately, like with urban hens or bees, there is a process that we have to evaluate, like our policies or our plans. How does this interact with them? What are we conflicting with? So there is opportunity to evaluate, but again, there might be challenges and barriers that we didn't foresee coming up with bylaws and our land use bylaws to be specific. So again, we could look at it, but I don't know how well it can be moved up and how low hanging of a fruit it actually is.
Okay, so ideally we would amend our bylaws and update existing bylaws prior to hitting any of those things.
We can look at the feasibility of changing them and how easy it would be to update. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGough-Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. The report is fantastic. We've been waiting for this for a long time. Maybe just a special acknowledgement for the work that you guys have done, looking in, just especially around the history around the Indigenous side of this. And clearly, you've referenced some pretty key literature in there that I've had the opportunity to read. So I think that was a really important part that was woven into this. Really well done. So thanks for doing that. To that end, though, I didn't see any specific actions. I know that the potential partners were there. I would have liked to have seen something more, more direct there in terms of an action. There are some easier things that we can do, working with some of our local Indigenous peoples and just around providing opportunities for them, whether it's, you know, growing tobacco or sage or sweetgrass or whatever. There are ways that we can do that. And to Councillor McCook's point, like I hate to see this beautiful document in front of us and then us accept it as information and then it potentially collects dust. So more on that in a second. I think there are some things that we can do to help kind of advance this. But that caught my eye of how much time and effort you guys went into making sure that we recognize the Indigenous history of urban agriculture. So thank you for that. To that end, you know, the motion that I'm sure is going to come up is going to say receive as information. And I don't feel that does this justice. Like, is there a way to, you know, I want to make sure that we bring this up, right? We get busy and you know, this is great. And then next week, something else will be in front of us. And, you know, regrettably, and maybe I'll speak for myself, it just kind of falls into the background. Is there a way that we can maybe accept this and direct administration to bring it back in a committee of the whole in Q2 or Q3 next year or something like that, just so that it keeps us refreshed and maybe in the middle of half of next year, we've got a bit more time and, you know, we've been through this wonderful budget process that Mike is about to lead us through. I don't, my worries we accept it as information and then it just sits there and there's way too much good work in here for us to not take a look at some of these specific actions.
My first thoughts are, Councillor, a good suggestion. We would accept information this evening and perhaps we can diarize for the future COTW, but we'll default to Madam Clerk on suggesting how to bring it back at a later time as a refresher possibly. Madam Clerk.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Munkoff Swain, we could add to the motion to receive for information and to direct administration to provide an update by, we could say Q3 of 2024, and just leave it a little bit open and flexible. That might be one option that's available to council.
Yeah, and the other
So I'll
thing,
come back to you then for the motion or the information you can add on your, if you want to add on to it yourself, you can do that, okay?
yeah, wait till you see how much I want to add on to it before you see if you want to give it to me or not.
We
But
only got 3 minutes.
I know.
Be gentle.
So
Be
yeah,
gentle.
the other piece of that is like, there is some work that can be done. Like what can we pull out? Like, I'd like to see administration do some work at what we can pull out here that we can do. What are some of these things that can be done that aren't, that, you know, don't require that additional position? There are some really good nuggets in here. And I know you gave a very good answer around, you know, how it needs to be all connected and that sort of thing. But I wonder if we, you know, as part of that motion, as you bring this back, you know, not only bring it back during a committee of the whole, but with a look from administration on what items could be actionable without the, you know, the core funding processes that are in front of it. And that's not to say that we might not approve this during our budget process. We'll get into that. Does that scramble make sense?
Madam Clerk.
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Munkoff Swain, I think really what you're asking for is to refer this report back to administration with direction to bring it back with more details on anything that is possible to be implemented in the short term. So I could draft that. We wouldn't do the motion to receive for information. We would just do the referral motion in that case. In terms of timeline for bringing it back, I wouldn't mind some input from the lead department on what might be the right timing for that. Q3? Okay. So if that is acceptable, I could draft that motion to refer it back to administration to bring back with options for what can be implemented in the shorter term by Q3 of 2024.
Will that work?
It kind of does. So, and I know this is work, right? So I get that. We're asking you to do more work on this. And the hesitancy for me is, you know, Q3, you know, that's fall. You know, I'm not an expert, but not sure how much urban agriculture you can do, you know, over the winter months. So then you lose another year, right? So we're into, so is it realistic to bring it back in the spring to see if we can, and see if we can try to implement some of this stuff, or is that, and you know, when I think spring budget, is that?
They're just, Amin's just conversing for a second on that possibility, so. Yeah, okay.
So, sorry to drag this down. I don't want it to, it's too good a work to just let it slide.
Okay, we'll get this quickly. Then I got 2 more speakers who want to speak, and we got presenters coming in,
Yeah.
so we'll get this wrapped up quickly. Give you something to work with for a motion, Sam. They'll craft it for you while the next two speakers are with their questions. And I'll come back to you for the motion. Maybe. Yeah. Look.
So this is the draft of the motion, understanding that we still have to determine the timeline, but this is what it could potentially look like. So we would be referring the report back to administration for further work on actions in the plan that may be implemented in the short term. I'm just going to make that a little clearer, and the report be provided by. Ms. Raymond, have you had a chance to confer with your team?
CO Schwartz? You got too many mics on. Hang on a second. I gotta kill a mic here. I'll kill my own. CO Schwartz?
Yes, thank you, to Councillor Moncusco and through the mayor. We haven't gone into this level of detail on a plan like this before, because what you're asking for is a work plan. This work plan is going to take resources and we don't have them. So what we are suggesting is that by the end of the third quarter of 2024, we can come back with ideas and accomplishments that we've been able to take care of on 2024 and high level plans for the future, but get into a detailed work plan. We don't have the resources.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm asking for a work plan. I'm asking for exactly what you just said in that second part, is to take a look at what we can do. And as I went through the report, I picked out a few things that I thought we could move. That is not my job to do that. So the motion that was drafted made sense to me. My preference would be second quarter. If the resources aren't there and you need to come back and ask for an extension, then we can do that. We've done that before. Yeah.
No, if I get a mic going now, fine. We're good then? CO Schwartz, follow up, then I'm gonna move on to the next two speakers and come back to the motion.
No,
CO
I'm
Schwartz.
just gonna confirm that, sure, we can leave it at second quarter, and yeah, if we're not ready, we'll certainly be coming back and saying that we're not ready.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll move on to Councillor Natalibus. Nathan, you have the floor. Oh, Madam Clerk, sorry, my apologies, Madam Clerk. Not yet. I'll come back to him after the next two speakers. There may be other discussion that may affect the motion. I'm not sure who's speaking. Nathan, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a couple questions. I know one thing you had mentioned, that there was a high level of support. Just running through the numbers here, I'm looking at about 0.5% of our population for the second response. Traditionally, when you run through some of this stuff, I realize this is likely your bread and butter. What kind of response rate do you traditionally see?
That's a great question. It depends on the community and it depends on the urgency of the plan. I find typically whenever it comes to land use matters, it tends to have a much higher response rate. So maybe upwards of 1% to 2%. But I think because this one is a longer term ambition and it is one, those who were involved were very adamant in their positioning whenever they came forward and very passionate. But if you don't have necessarily a stake in urban agriculture, you wouldn't feel the need to come forward. So typically for this sort of a plan, this is about where we would range.
Okay, perfect. And just another question again, relating to your experience. Initially started off with about 340 respondents and then it dropped about 66%. Again, is that something that you would traditionally see in terms of response rate?
Yeah, so in the first round, typically it's a lot more open-ended and we have a lot more inputs into the system. So we went to schools, we went to a lot more specific locations and workshops for that as well. And we specifically tried to retrieve those numbers through that system. And through that system, you also amplify the number of surveys it goes out to in that first phase. The second phase is intended to be a follow-up with everyone who is a part of the process, as well as promoting further out. But yes, typically we do see a bit of a drop off from the first phase to the second phase.
Okay, so would it be fair to say in the second phase, it's a little more targeted, probably towards the population that supports that?
Correct.
Okay. I just had another question too, as a lot of the cities and communities are pushing for higher density. What is your experience with higher density, obviously smaller lots, houses closer together, and things such as these B&N programs where obviously it's going to affect your neighbor and surrounding houses?
Yeah, typically in our research, we found that there is a minimum lot requirement size. And so similar to what Coralie had mentioned before for that third action item for investigating the feasibility, that will be a part of that investigation to figure out what the minimum lot size will be, the minimum offset from the sidewalks, the minimum offset from schools, those type of Beaumont will need to determine that. However, I will just mention that a lot of municipalities in the EMRB do have some semblance of urban bee or hen programs, mind you, within limitations of lot size.
Perfect. And just last question, because I know we're short on time here. But in terms of, I guess, the implementation phase, I'm just looking at this Gantt chart or this implementation chart. And am I correct in saying after we hire an interdisciplinary plan coordinator, if we were to go that route, we're about 4 years out before we actually see true action in terms of implementing and developing some of the things that are mentioned within the report? Because a lot of it is feasibility research, which is obviously important, creating web pages. But I don't see any true action in terms of physical evidence of the project until later.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for more physical implementation, I would look more so to the pilot program piece. Those will help to inform some of the other elements on here, including bylaw components as well. I might speak to ask for administration to elaborate.
Yes, so a lot of these actions or initiatives, they have some groundwork that needs to be completed before they can actually be realized. So that is going to take time, and going through the processes, changing bylaws, and then eventually with the pilots, we will see that tangible action.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that report. Very detailed. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. One more for Steve. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. The discussion just sparked another thought for me. In the report, you had a page that detailed areas of alignment or conflict, and there's a real make sense bullet point in there that says the urban agricultural plan should investigate the potential of fruit tree planting on public lands as directed in the urban forest management strategy. So there's a huge alignment there already, and I'll point out that, you know, as an activity of a growing municipality, we are already doing planting plans.
Yep.
We already have required densities. We already have the people who know this stuff employed to make these decisions. So there's a huge synergy there, and a huge alignment there with that urban forest management strategy, the agriculture plan, and the development activities that we do right now. Like, people are making those decisions and talking through species diversity, planting plans, densities, locations, all of that right now. So low hanging fruit, no pun intended.
Good one, Steve. All right, seeing no further questions, I'll now look towards a motion. So I'm coming back to Councilor Monkoff-Swain. I believe the motion that's Madam Clerk helped you draft is on the screen. Are you prepared to make your motion? You have the floor, Sam.
Thank you. I'll move that the November 14, 2023 Urban Agricultural Plan report be referred back to administration for further work on any actions in the plan that may be implemented in the short term, and the report be provided by the end of the second quarter of 2024.
Thank you. I understand your reasons for it. Do you wish to speak to it before I ask council for any discussion?
No, I don't want to take up any more time. If anyone's going to vote no, let me know and I'll see if I can convince you otherwise.
You get one or the other. So you gave up the floor. No problem. I appreciate that. Members of council, discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All right, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you, please. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Monkoff-Swain. Thank you to our presenters. Again, great report, a lot of information, good discussion. That's why we're here long enough to with that. That's a very good thing. So thank you for your time this evening. Looking forward to seeing you next time in front of council. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is our item 6.2 Community Grants Funding Program Awards. I believe Ms. Mansher is joining us by Zoom. Is that correct? Madam Clerk, or Ms. Mead, is she on? Okay, I see her there now. Thank you very much. And we have a fellow presenter on the So after Ms. Mancher begins the introduction, please introduce yourself and speak in the microphone, and you're welcome to speak once Ms. Mancher is done. Joanne, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Joanna Mancher here, Team Lead Arts and Events. I apologize, I'm not able to join in person. I had some unexpected family situations come up. So I appreciate being able to join everyone tonight via Zoom. Joining me here this evening is Julian Winters. He is the chair of the Grant Funding Advisory Committee. And we're here this evening to present council with the committee recommendations for the funding awards of the second intake of the 2023 Community Grant Funding Program. As the report outlines, the committee received 10 applications for a total request of $76,000. Now, earlier for the entire 2023 allocation for the Community Grant Fund is $70,000. And earlier this year, after the first intake, the committee presented recommendations and council approved those recommendations, and just over $34,000 was awarded during that first intake. So that means remaining for this second intake is just under $36,000. The committee was in a tough position reviewing all 10 applications that came in. And as a note, we really are seeing wonderful projects coming forward by community groups that have presented before to the Community Grant Fund, but also we welcomed some new applications this year from, or this intake rather, from groups that have not yet applied or that haven't applied in quite some time. So that was a wonderful thing to see. The grant report outlines the requests that have come in and the recommended funding by the grant committee. I'll quickly just give a little bit of an overview as to the entire program. I know we have a couple of new counselors that were not part of the first intake. So this community grant program offers matching grants to local nonprofits and community organizations. Groups can request between $1,000 and $10,000, up to 50% of their eligible expenses. And the purpose of the community grant program is to fund one-time projects and initiatives, operating expenses of organizations in their developmental stage, once per fiscal year up to 3 years, or events that are primarily designed and delivered for the general public. The program is competitive and eligibility does not guarantee funding. And I know Mr. Winters will be able to go into more detail about the projects that were submitted, and the outcomes and the great community initiatives that were being reviewed as part of this intake. Also, a brief overview is that the committee, during the review process, the committee receives the applications in advance, and each committee member reviews the applications by themselves, does an initial scoring, identifies some questions, concerns, high points. And then as a group, the committee comes together, reviews the applications all together. There is also an opportunity for groups to participate in an optional Q&A portion. Once all of that concludes, the committee comes to a consensus on final rankings and recommended amounts. And that is what you see before you this evening. Additionally, this go around for attachment 2 provides a bit more detail in terms of what the projects being proposed are. And there's also a page that highlights some notes in terms of what the committee saw and general notes about the applications that were received. So some of the notes really do highlight common issues or high points that were noted across many applications, and some were a little bit more specific. But I will turn it over to Mr. Winters, and he'll be able to give all of you a bit more of an overview of the grants.
Welcome to council. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. As Joanna mentioned, my name is Julian Winters. This is my second time being here for the grant funding community amendment. Sorry, just a little closer.
That's a little better. Yeah, thanks.
And be going quickly through the various projects and the amounts awarded to each one that we're recommending for council and mayor to approve today. I don't know if we wanted to bring them up on the screen or.
We have them on our screen. We should be okay. If you're prepared to proceed where you are, we're okay. Unless Ms. Mead easily can put on the screen easily, if that's not too much trouble. We can put on the list of recipients. from the committee? I think it's before that. Yeah. Yeah. Can you see that okay? It's on our screens, on our computers. Can you see it okay? We use it for your reference. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. So the first application was for the Beaumont Men's Shed Association, where they're seeking to expand their membership and provide a regular routine mental health, men's gathering, a unique program that I don't think is emulated in any other program within Beaumont. And the funding committee was very supportive of it, considering and balancing other needs on some of the other applications. We're recommending $5,000 out of their $10,000 request. The Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, the committee felt they were championing and furthering the economic vibrancy of Beaumont. Again, a very strong, well-written application. They provided a lot of extra context by coming in person and presenting to the funding committee. And we were recommending $1,480 out of $4,000 for their application. The next was the Drive Happiness Association for Senior Assisted Transportation. They are also looking to expand their service in the community that they already provide for helping seniors that need the extra assistance, whether it be getting groceries or going to Millwoods for medical services. The funding committee is looking to recommend $1,480 out of $4,000 for their application. The next application was from the Black Impact Alliance Foundation of Beaumont, who are looking to set up a 2024 Black History Month celebration through a multi-pronged approach in the community through education at schools and also events throughout the community. This, as far as I'm aware, is underrepresented in Beaumont in terms of living here for 37 years. And I think it's tremendous impact that it'll have on the education and awareness in the town. And we were recommending $6,000 out of the $10,000 request for the Black Impact Alliance. The next application was the Beaumont Composite High School Parent Advisory Association for the ESBCHS 2024 commencement and ceremony informal. And within similar order within previous years of intakes, the committee was recommending $2,500 out of their $10,000 request. The next application was the Triton Competitive Swim Society. They want to expand their competitive swimming program and expand the number of entrants in the community, better utilize, seeking funding to better utilize and promote community health, promote Beaumont by having a larger and more competitive mandate. We are recommending $5,000 out of their $10,000 funding request. The next application is the Good Harvest Surplus Limited. This unique, sorry, throat's a little dry. They're seeking funding for expanding their service, which doesn't replicate the food bank, but simply expands. Sorry.
Get some water for you.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
I should have brought some. But yeah, they're seeking funding to expand their food delivery service, which does so in a discreet, respectful manner that isn't competitive with the food bank, but additional to very unique needs that can be simply one-off if somebody's in a pinch in a very certain time. So given the economic climate out there and the needs and inflation, the committee, thank you, thought this was also a very well-deserving cause, and we were recommending $5,000 of the $10,000 for the Good Harvest. The next application was the Beaumont Community Curling Club Association, who are looking to further support the Alberta Curling Series here in Beaumont, which is a multi-event program from what I understand. And by expanding and providing funding, they get the necessary facilities and equipment and involvement from the association that they need to continue supporting that tournament. And it's expanding awareness of Beaumont and better utilization of facilities while enhancing community support throughout the town, so, or city, sorry. And we're recommending 5,400 out of the 10,000 for the Beaumont Curling Club. And the last application that we're recommending funding for is the Beaumont 50 Plus Club, which is a pilot program for seniors for low-cost meals. This would support mental health, socialization for our senior citizen community, and possibly secondary benefits for even supporting local businesses that would provide meal support or catering for this. And we're recommending 4,000 out of the 8,000 for this funding request. And the one application that we did not advance for a recommendation for funding was the Beaumont Community Elves Association. As while we felt it was a very worthwhile cause, going by the criteria in the application process and being fair to all other applicants, we thought it was falling under the exclusionary material where it's an operating request outside of what's allowed. So we are recommending no funding for the Beaumont Community Elves.
Thank you. Excellent review of the thought patterns of the committee and the result of the recommendations. Thank you very much for that extra detail, which is very nice to see. It helps us understand the process of the committee's work. It's a very important work, which I'll get to the very end. Questions from members of council for our presenter this evening. Councilor McGuff-Swain, followed by Councilor Barnhart. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the overview. Fantastic as always. Just maybe a shout out to you and Joanna administration for all the detailed work that went in behind this. I think previously, and we asked for the feedback, we asked you to adapt, and you've done a fantastic job at doing that. I think previously we've had kind of the one pager and we're asked a lot of questions as to why, and what you've provided in here gives a great rationale. So all good for me. I just wanted to acknowledge that we asked for it, you guys delivered. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor, followed by Councilor Penrod.
Thank you very much. And again, volunteers doing this kind of work, we really do appreciate it because it is very time consuming and really important in our community to have the kind of oversight that you're providing. I was surprised to see the one group that was turned down. And I don't want to get into all of the details because that's not our place here, but I'm wondering if there's any lessons to be learned for those that may be applying in terms of when you said it's outside the scope of what you are funding. Could you maybe elaborate that on a little bit more on that? Like what, because it doesn't look like it from what we see on the paper here, but I might be missing something.
Sorry, for the Beaumont Community Elves. Yeah. So again, yeah, we thought is very strong, very well and deserved effort that they put in. And I believe they had tons of volunteer hours and provide a lot of service for a lot of the community. And it is a very worthwhile cause. However, being respectful and equitable to all the other applicants, within the program's current structure of what should be excluded from being funding eligible, the committee came to determination that it fell within that criteria and shouldn't meet the necessary requirements for funding.
Some of the expenses, I'm hearing you say some of the expenses were not eligible for the grant.
We deemed it as being a continuing operating cost. As their core, there was no change in mandate, which would be required to have it be funded as an operating cost under the current criteria.
Okay, yeah. And if I may, just one further one. I was surprised to see Good Harvest Surplus Limited. That sounds like a company name, and I know we're limited to nonprofit only. Is it a company or is it a nonprofit organization?
It is a non-for-profit. In that particular one, the application they came in and presented to us, and the application itself, yeah, it kind of came across as wasn't really sure what this was. Sorry.
So it's a non-profit company is what I'm hearing.
It is a not-for-profit, registered as a not-for-profit in the province of Alberta. And they are quite literally a delivery service, from what I understand, delivering food to not only Beaumont, but the surrounding area as well for individuals that need it on a perhaps short on a paycheck and can't provide for their family or whatever it is. And it's a very discreet way. So sometimes reaching out for community services, I understand, can be a barrier in itself, as it can be challenging for individuals to admit that they need that kind of services. So the service that they're providing is simply another mechanism that can be a one-time solution or ongoing, depending on their individual
So
circumstances.
theirs is a different model than the existing food bank. Okay,
Excellent.
thank you very much, and I appreciate the information.
No problem.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Penrod, followed by Counselor Tellenboss. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. So I don't think this would go so far as to be pecuniary interest, but I just want, for transparency's sake, to say that I did sit this committee as one of my last responsibilities before being elected. And so I just want to state that for the record. I won't ask a bunch of other questions because I was part of all those deliberations. But thanks for being here tonight, Mr. Winters, and for your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Counselor Tellenboss. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Thank you so much for all you do. Obviously, it's important and these are critical for our nonprofit organizations. I'm all about lessons learned, so I just have a couple of quick questions. In terms of the grading criteria that you have to run through, and obviously your feet are wet in there, is there any improvements or do you feel it's appropriate, the existing criteria to assess if someone is able or appropriate for the funding?
I think the current criteria for the aims of the program is probably adequate. Maybe what could be highlighted for the applicants is probably reaching out to administration. I believe they don't have a large funding rate, and maybe Joanna can correct me on this, of individuals reaching out for help with their applications or questions on the application criteria. If that somehow could be communicated more to potential applicants, that hey, reaching out to the administration and getting a better sense of how the criteria works and the grading mechanism. And potentially that would not only alleviate somebody from maybe applying and being rejected from funding, but it could also open up the idea of somebody that thinks they're ineligible, that maybe there is a path forward for them to apply. So I think it could probably go both ways. This application we deem maybe isn't eligible, but there's potentially other ones out there that didn't apply because they didn't think they're eligible.
Perfect, thank you. And just running through the report, I just want to clarify, because based on what I'm reading here, these organizations were given a second opportunity to clarify if perhaps they weren't clear enough in their request for funding, correct?
That's correct. All applicants are given the opportunity to present in front of the committee, and not all of them do, but in my opinion, I highly recommend that they do in the future, just simply because the applications, you get a lot more across from information from meeting in person than you can sometimes from the applications themselves.
Perfect, thank you. And one last question, I guess, to administration. I'm just curious, in terms of follow through, obviously this is a very detailed policy and program. Are we 100% evaluating all of these individuals after they receive funding just to make sure that they're compliant with all of the requirements?
Thank you very much for the questions through the mayor to Councillor Tellenboss. We do have oversight mechanisms right now where we require recipients to submit final reporting forms and receipts to demonstrate that expenses were used as outlined in the grant application. There's also, when they receive approval, they'll get a letter reminding them of their reporting requirements and reminding them that they need to follow through with their project as described in the application, and administration does conduct a review of those materials that are received. Sometimes we accept them as received, and there are often times we go back with clarifying questions or asking for further information.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. You're good? Appreciate that. Counselor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And just reiterating, thank you so much to the committee for all your hard work and dedication. Clearly not always an easy task to kind of decide who gets money and who doesn't, but it looks like you guys did a really great job in spreading it out to a variety of projects and groups in our community. I also, to Councillor Monkoff-Swain's point, really appreciate the report and the detail. You know, we asked for some additional detail and we received that. And so it's definitely really helpful for us to kind of roll through this process. Have any applicants given any feedback on the application process?
That one I'll defer to Joanna.
Sure thing. Thank you, Barry. That's a wonderful question, Councillor McCook. Yes, yes and no. We've received feedback. Sometimes there's frustration with the questions themselves. So this intake, there was a new FAQ sheet that was available online on the website to try to address some of the issues in terms of maybe using some plain language saying, okay, here's exactly what the committee is hoping to draw out with this question. So there were some additional resources available to groups for this intake. I can also recognize and appreciate that submitting an application is a time-consuming effort in and of itself. And it really is important to recognize that any application received is very important and helps inform the entire program. So it's very much appreciated. So short answer, yes, we've received feedback and that is taken into account for each iteration of the intakes.
Perfect, thank you. And I know, Mr. Winters, you mentioned this. So are people able to reach out to administration for some kind of guidance through the application process? Obviously, you can't really give them too much, but are they able to get that guidance?
Yeah, to go ahead.
Yes, so in the application package and on the website, it's encouraged that interested parties do reach out to administration. And as sort of mentioned previously, there's very few folks that actually take administration up on that offer. So if anyone is listening, I would very much invite. It's wonderful to hear all the exciting ideas. And we had one applicant that contacted administration early on, and we were able to review their initial draft and ask some clarifying questions and say, okay, well, if these are the questions we're having when we read this, if you can address that and revamp what you've written, it'll make for a stronger application. Because ultimately, administration is not part of the review process. So we'd actually love to make it even harder for the grant committee to review and make a decision. We would love to help each applicant make a strong application.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, it sounds like we kind of do make every effort to see people be successful in this process. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. As previous councillor mentioned, again, the level of detail, much appreciated, helps us understand the logic and the working of the committee, and just emphasize the fact that you are a decision-making body in this committee that decides how it helps to decide how taxpayer dollars are spent. Not easy decision when you live in the community that you're working in. These are local groups. So it's a difficult job the committee has to do, but you've done a very good job of it. And please pass on my compliments and that of council to your committee for work they do. It's important, very important work. It's not by any means, it's not undervalued. It's very important work you guys are doing to help us be good adjudicators of taxpayer dollars and help all our community with growth. So much appreciated for your committee's work. Having said that, I will now entertain a motion from members of council to adopt the report as presented. We do have a draft motion ready to go. Member of council willing to move the motion. Councilor Natelebas. Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect, thank you. Looking to move the motion that the October 2023 community grant allocations as set out in the chart in the November 14th, 2023 community grant funding program awards report be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing no discussion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Penrod, you should have make a discussion comment. You have the floor, Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just you'll allow me to highlight that we're currently recruiting to all our boards and advisory committees for the city. And I'll just speak to my own experience really briefly. This grant funding program awards committee was an amazing way to get a better understanding of the various groups active in our community, especially emerging groups, and just exceedingly professionally run and supported by administration. I'd commend application to any of my neighbors if they're more interested in knowing what's going on and what's coming in the future in our awesome city.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate the comment. Any further discussion on the motion from members of council? Seeing none, at this point, council, would you please vote on the motion before you? That Vote carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you to our presenters. Appreciate your work. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important work and it's much appreciated. Please pass on our compliments to your committee members, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, council, with that, next on our agenda this evening is a rather large one. 6.3, the 2024 proposed municipal operating utility budget and capital budget presentation. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you'll be joining us this evening for presenting. Let me just find your microphone for you. Your microphone's on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I proceed, I believe Mr. Dowler has a few opening comments. So I'll turn it over
Mr.
to him.
Dowler, I apologize, not looking to you first. Mr. Dowler, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments before I hand it over to Mr. DeBlanco to get into the good details of the budget in front of council this evening. To that end, this evening, administration is presenting a proposed 2024 municipal operating budget, proposed 2024 municipal capital budget, and proposed 2024 utility budget. Even more than recent budgets, these proposed budgets are primarily focused on maintaining existing programs and services. In working through the development of the 2024 budgets, it became abundantly clear that previous community growth, current growth, the impacts from previous decisions, and inflation are all putting tremendous pressure on the operations of the city. To try and manage these pressures in a fiscally responsible manner, administration has placed emphasis on dealing with increases resulting from commitments that have already been made. This includes increases required to maintain public safety through the RCMP contract, improving services to the citizens with the Service Experience Office, supporting existing demand in aquatics, and providing support throughout the organization to deal with inflationary impacts. Even with this focused approach, there are several cost pressures identified by administration related to the municipal operating budget that could not be accommodated within a reasonable tax increase. As council will be able to see in the budget document, further support to reserves is required. As an example, the financial stabilization and fleet equipment reserves will require additional funding to appropriately address risk and maintain existing assets. Inflation and growth pressures currently being felt by some municipal services will continue to be a challenge. Administration will need to perform further analysis to form a clearer picture of what strategies can be pursued to deal with these pressures. Once again, the municipal capital budget focuses on renewing existing assets as the top priority. Beyond this, administration has focused on growth projects for the school site assembly, some arterial roads, expansion of Wi-Fi within the city, general equipment growth, and projects to address safety. The utility budget is being proposed to maintain existing infrastructure and to start to address some of the growth pressures identified through the recently completed utility master plan. Administration understands and is well aware that the proposed increase of 6.49% is not desirable, especially considering the current economic conditions. In any one year, administration attempts to keep the proposed municipal tax increase at a level similar to consumer price index for Alberta. If this philosophy had been maintained for the previous 5 budgets, the city would be collecting approximately $2.1 million in additional tax revenue in 2023. The pressure created with this revenue challenge, combined with the pressures from previous growth, the pressures of projected future growth, and the current economic situation have all contributed to a significant fiscal challenge for Beaumont. I will now hand off the presentation to Mr. DeBlanco to provide further context and details on the proposed budgets.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeBlanco. I'm the Director of Finance for the city. Accompanying the report is attachment 1, which is the 2024 proposed budget document. Each council member has also been provided a physical copy of the budget document. Also included with the report is attachment 2, which is information regarding the council identified capital projects that were identified earlier in the year. So the report presents administration's proposed budget for 2024, which includes the municipal operating, utility operating, municipal capital, and utility capital budgets. Once again, with these proposed budget, administration does believe they allow council to work towards their priorities as identified in the strategic plan. The municipal operating budget funds the tax-supported services for the city, which include things like recreation, protective services, and road maintenance. Utility operating budget obviously funds the utility-supported services such as water, wastewater, curbside collection, and stormwater drainage. One change from past budgets council may note is that the utility capital budget has been separated from municipal capital and is included in the same section as the utility operations. This has been done to further keep the infrastructure that is supported by taxes and the infrastructure that is supported by utility fees separate. The separation was already in place in practice, but the segregation in the document is intentional to emphasize that utility rates must be set at an appropriate level to support the renewal and replacement of crucial utility infrastructure. An area of focus each year on the budget is always the tax levy increase. Summary of the proposed increase can be found on page 12 of the budget document and is now shown on the screen. I'll apologize if the font's a little small, but this table does show that this shows the tables that itemizes the major pieces already alluded to by Mr. Dowler that contribute to the proposed net tax increase of 6.49. Quick review for council with this table on the screen is that the positive and negative numbers on the table are in relation to the tax levy. So a positive number would contribute towards an increase, where a negative number or a number in brackets would contribute toward a reduction of a required tax increase. The cost to maintain services, as shown on the screen in 2024, contributes 7% towards this increase. So notable items driven primarily from inflationary pressures are pay and benefits costs for the current staffing levels. Forecasts for benefits being provided by third parties have increased 9% from 2023. Mr. Dowler already mentioned substantial or additional staffing dollars are required to address the growth and increased demand experienced by the city's aquatics programs, as well as utility network expenses that have increased 13% compared to the 2023 budget. These are due to contract increases and the rising cost of gas and electricity. Included in the 2024 budget is the full annualization of the Service Experience Office, which was approved as part of the city's 23 municipal operating budget. This was only partially funded in 2023. The additional $204,000 as shown on the screen reflects the entire cost of operating the program for 12 months. Also included in the 24 budget is an increase to the city's RCMP contract. This figure represents a 2.6% increase to the proposed taxes. City receives the multi-year financial plan each year from the RCMP. From that, what we can see is an increase is being driven by equipment replacement, inflationary adjustments, increases to personnel costs, and shoring up what the city's forecast is to reduce any risk of incurring a deficit. Included in this budget is also always an estimate for the additional tax revenue from the physical growth of the city. This estimate is determined in collaboration with the city's municipal assessor, as well as with forecasts from planning and development. From that, it is expected that an increase of 3.9% to the city's assessment base will occur for 2024, which will result in an additional $1 million in revenue. As you can see in the bottom of the screen, that's displayed in brackets, therefore reducing the overall tax levy. Once again, Mr. Dowler already alluded to this, but the city shoots to have approximately inflationary tax increases. And in the past number of years, they've been slightly below what would be in the CPI for Alberta. So one impact of doing this is it's deferring the ability to effectively respond to growth pressures. This in turn with inflationary pressures, the overall proposed tax increases reflects the need to catch up on the city's physical growth. In terms of ratepayer impact, what we're seeing is that the average residential taxpayer, and that's with a assessed value of the property of $447,000, would see an increase to their annual tax, municipal property tax bill of $197. And then for non-residential properties, because we use the metric of $100,000 of assessed value, So per $100,000 of assessed value, we see a annual impact of approximately $62. On the utility budget, give me a sec. Proposed utility budget has expenditures of approximately 13 million. So this is to maintain support for the current services as well as deal with growth. On app, there's different changes to the rates, be it water, wastewater, curbside collection and storm, but on average, that results in a 10.8% average increase. And this is very largely driven from costs passed on from the wastewater commission, as well as transfers to reserve to once again ensure that we're renewing and replacing the city's utility infrastructure. With that, capital budget. City funds its renewal and replacement through its capital reserves, which are contributed to through both municipal operating and the utility operating budgets. The proposed budgets include renewal and replacement, accounting for 4.9 million to replace existing municipal and utility infrastructure. There's a couple bullet points of highlights there, as well as everything else in the budget document. Beyond renewal and replacement within the capital budget is growth. The city responds to the needs of the community by funding growth-related projects. Specialized funding sources for that would be capital grants or government transfers, offsite levies, as well as debt. Once again, there's some highlights on the screen for what is included as funded within the budget document. Sorry. So with that, next steps are, as in prior years, we'll be utilizing a question and answer process over the coming week to answer any questions council may have on the proposed budget. Administration asks that council provide their questions to administration by Monday, November 20th. And administration then commits to provide written responses to these questions by November 27th. These question and answers will be included in the agenda package for the council budget meetings scheduled for November 29th through December 1st. Following these meetings, budget approval is scheduled for the council meeting on December 12th. This concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to the mayor and council. Thank you.
Mr. Blanco, Mr. Dollar, thank you much for the presentation. Appreciate that. Thank you for outlining the next steps. Just to reiterate that council will have the next 4 business days to draft and submit questions to administration to clarify various points of the budget. Those questions will be answered by administration back by the 27th before our budget workshop is on the 29th, the 30th, and December 1st, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And those questions are published to the residents as in previous years. So I would encourage any residents who are listening, they have a question on the budget, to reach out to their fellow or the councilor of their choice, ask any question they may have of the budget process to be included perhaps in the question package if it could be done that way. So I encourage residents to reach out to the councilor they wish to speak to it and ask any question you may wish to going forward. So having said that, are there any statements from council members this evening or any questions before we move on to accept this report as information? Our work really begins now tearing apart the budget, as they say, page by page and going through it and asking questions. So I've Councilman Monkoff Swain, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Councilor Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you for the overview. Just confirming, will we get that presentation if we haven't already that you just went through?
Package, so it's available for members of council as well as for the public.
Very helpful. Thank you. A couple things. First, thanks for the opportunity earlier on in the year to look at some of the capital items that council, some of the ideas, for lack of a better term, that we brought forward and that initial scoping that you guys have done. Clearly, those are all unfunded. And so we'll talk about those as we get into the capital project. But I do appreciate that process. I thought that was a good improvement. What I do want to flag, though, is just for consideration, and I don't think we need motions or anything like that. But before we dive in for this process, I'm a big fan of kind of looking back to go forward. And so I briefly spoke to a few folks about this earlier. I'd like for us to take a quick snapshot of what did we commit to in our 2023 budget and where are we at with that. Now, I know you've come forward and brought us the quarterly update, the Q3 update, and there's a chance in there. But what I'd really like to see on the previous budget, page 18 had that kind of newly funded projects from an operating perspective. And like, there's like 7 or 8 things in there that we approved. So I just love just to walk through and say, yeah, we did this, we did this, we did this, or, you know, we've moved this over. I want us, and specifically, you know, there'll be questions around, you know, the service enhancements, all that sort of stuff. So, and on the capital side of thing as well. I think the last report, we shouldn't have too many questions on the capital because your last report in Q3 really dived in and gave us a really good update of where we're at, but mainly focused on that page 18 that talks about the proposed changes. I'd really like to see how administration kind of did with that, for lack of a better term. Recognize we only gave you 9 months this year to execute on that. That would be an ask from me. As it relates to the capital budget, I did have just one question, and I recall there was a 2 or 3 page document that spoke about pay as you go last time. And so I would just encourage you to circulate that report. I tried to find it here. It was back in an old agenda, but flick that out if you don't mind to council around that funding source and why you think that's important to be funded. Obviously, in this budget, it looks like it's about 700,000 that you're recommending putting into pay as you go. That's a direct hit to the tax levy. So maybe we could get in front of a lot of those questions if you share that 2 or 3 pager again. So I'd ask for that. And then as it relates to just to help me as I craft my questions, as it relates to the capital budget, if we go back to those 1 pages, right, of whatever the item is, in previous years, I think I've asked for this before, and it seems like we've got a little bit different process now. Is just identifying the funding source, right? And I know you guys aren't quite sure what that is going to be, but even just a preference, right? Do you think that this particular capital item is pay as you go, or is this a federal or a provincial grant? That really helps us, or I'll say me, understand where this, what I see in that budget document, it says program type 2 or program type 1. So I believe that's either reserves or government transfers, but I'd like to see that broken out, government transfers. What do we mean here? Is this federal, provincial grants, or is this pay as you go thing that we're looking to do? So instead of me spending a bunch of time with my written questions to ask about each and every one, I wonder if there's an ability to get that information in front of us around when you say government transfers, what does that specifically mean for us moving forward? So I'll leave it there. Just some suggestions to try to help speed up the process. But looking forward to diving in. Clearly, we're going to have a very tough conversation around the operating side of things. Capital here, we got north of $10 million in grants, so we could have a bit of opportunity there. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure we got that, got my concerns or recommendations up and ahead of us, but so far so good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor, followed by Councilman Netelebus. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I wanted to point out, just at a very high level here, is the public engagement tool that was circulated. I pulled up the 2023 graph, and it looked like we had 9 responses, 10, 4, 7, 6, 5, 4, and then you go to this year, and we had 20 some responses, and 19 and 18 or whatever. So there was quite a higher uptake in the public engagement budget tool. So just wanted to highlight that. I think last year was the first time we tried it. But my point is that more people went online, used the tool, and it's starting to show some trends that are helpful, I guess, useful knowledge. So we just wanted to point that out at a high level tonight. And Councillor Monkoff-Swain, your suggestion on looking back before we go forward, like, where did we end up on these projects? Like, are they done? What's not done? An update on that. I think that's a good suggestion, and that could be will be very helpful to frame the work that we want to do moving forward. Let's have a look at what we did, what's left, and then what we have moving forward. So that's all for tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. And I do appreciate your comment on the public engagement being a little more uptake. That's actually very good information. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you. Councilman Natalibus, Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a few quick comments, kind of tying into what Councillor Van Nieuwerk and McCoff Swain had mentioned there. But just it is disappointing to know that in kind of the world we're in right now, where people are struggling financially, and we talk about affordability, and we're seeing a significant increase like this. It will be a tough time during budget, as mentioned, where we are going to have to review and determine what's appropriate and potentially what's not. Because I do realize that a lot of residents are struggling, and myself being new, I have been at the door. So I do appreciate that everyone is going to struggle swallowing this budget. So yeah. I just want to mention that.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate the comment. Seeing no further comments or questions, I think we can probably move to the point now. We're asking for a motion to adopt the presentation as information. We have our work ahead of us the next couple of weeks, all of us, for our workshop. So in the meantime, I'll ask for a member of council to move this report be received as information. Councillor Barnhart, would you like to proceed with that?
Sure, Mayor, I'll move that the November 14, 2023 report to 2024 proposed municipal operating, 2024 proposed municipal capital, and 2024 utility budget be received as information.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion on the screen before you? And council, that does carry unanimously as well. Thank you very much, council, gentlemen, administration, and our finance department, Mr. Dollar, Mr. Blanco, thank you for the presentation. We'll be seeing you very soon, I'm sure, and we'll spend a lot of time together the next couple of weeks here. So with that, it's 7:26. Normally take about a 10-minute break around 7:30. So I'm going to call a 10-minute recess. We'll come back at 7:35, 7:36, and we'll begin when we come back to 6.4, pathway and crossway options, 63rd Street to Beaumont Sport and Rec Center. That'll be on our agenda. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you. This evening, continue on with our November 14th City Council meeting of the City of Beaumont. Our next on our agenda is 6.4, pathway and crossing options for 63rd Street to Beaumont Sport and Rec Center. Mr. Chartrand, I believe you'll be presenting this evening. So when you're ready, sir, I'll have your mic on for you there, and you are good to go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Corey Chartrand. I'm the manager of municipal projects here at the City of Beaumont. I'm here today to present options for pedestrian crossing over the LeBlanc Canal connecting 63rd Street and the Beaumont Sport and Recreational Center that was requested from council on May 9th. Administration has provided council with two structural options for this crossing to review, along with the option to not construct a crossing at this location. The first option is for the construction of a culvert bridge structure across the LeBlanc Canal. This is the cheapest option of the two structures in regard to both its construction and its maintenance costs. The second option is a span bridge structure. This type of structure does have the aesthetic appeal, however, is more costly to construct and maintain over the long run. Both of these options carry a minimum lifespan of 25 years. The third option is to not install a pedestrian crossing over the canal. This option requires pedestrians to use the current pedestrian infrastructure that is in place adjacent to the canal, and this option would not carry any cost for the construction of a crossing structure or any increase in maintenance costs. Administration would assess any signage improvements along the canal, informing residents of the safety risk of the unauthorized crossing of the canal. At this point in time, I'd like to welcome any questions that council may have on the report that we presented.
And Mr. Chartrand, appreciate that for the brevity and the detail. Much appreciated. And with that, I'll begin the conversation with Mr. Van Nieuwerk as he pulls us off consent, has some thoughts or concerns. So Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to council for supporting pulling this off the consent agenda just to have a little bit more conversation around it tonight. What I don't want to do is get into budget talk stuff, right? I'm going to try and stay out of there and leave that for, the end of the month. But what I wanted to focus the questions on tonight was how we get to 310 and 500 and the process that we go through to get to those budgets. I'm not familiar with budget classes or whatever, but talk to us about the accuracy of that budget. Obviously, I don't think that the procurement process has been initiated to get these numbers. These are this is about what this should cost, this is about what that should cost. So I guess let me be clear with a question, I guess, is can you inform council the process and conversations and what types of groups you talk to in order to come up with the 310 and the 500 on these options, and then I'll go from there. Thank you.
Through the mayor. So our process, what we first did was we got one of our consulting agencies that has done both types of structures within the capital region over the last 5 years. So they've done many of these, both these structures, the span bridge and the culvert type structure in recent years. And these are their costs based upon their experiences. However, these are very high level costs. So we still need to get into a geotechnical designs on them. We'd have to evaluate the structural requirements of what we're looking to put over this canal. However, we're quite confident that that's a good high level number for that based upon their experience and the amount of these structures that have been constructed with their expertise in mind over the last few years.
Yeah, no, that's good. And one of the reference points that our community has is we went through this process in Four Seasons Park about 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And the budgeted amount at that time was 160,000. Now, what I don't know is how much regulatory work was done or underway. I think that project coincided with some other work that was being done, because, you know, what I do know is, you know, this isn't as easy as just throwing a culvert in and putting some dirt around it and paving over top. And all, you know, that's the actions you have to go through, but there's regulatory framework associated with this. You know, it probably triggers DFO and fisheries. And, you know, and then there's the approvals, and then there are, you know, there's all these bits and pieces that go through this to get to this point. So not long ago, I sat here and said everything costs more than you think. Well, we were talking about doing a park in the center of Beaumont, and here we are again. Everything costs more than you think, right? When it comes to the operational costs for these, once again, you know, city staff have a reference point. You know, how often are we going there? What would we have to do? You know, if we're plowing trail, we're getting to the point with our metrics where I'm sure we understand how much it costs us to plow for an hour and all those kinds of things. So, you know, I'm confident that those numbers are accurate. But one of the things that I would just point out tonight is I bet you we already spend more than $1,700 a year there, fishing out bridges, fishing out rocks, fishing out. So the last time I was there, I personally pulled what I think were metal racks from an oven that were used to go across. Well, I didn't. I sent my boys in and they pulled them out and we put them up by the garbage can, and then someone had to come and do that, right? So, you know, so one of the issues we have with this space is that whether we like it or not, whether we approve money or not, the public is going to keep using it. So, you know, one of the discussions we may have to have at budget, along with option 3, if we don't decide some way how to fund this project, is putting up a fence. I don't like that idea, but you know, these are some of the things that we do need to think about, because I've literally seen people push strollers across this thing, right? Like, this is a problem area. So, I'll end by saying, you know, I'm confident that this could be done cheaper than 310, but our procurement process is going to tell us that when we initiate it. And the last question I have is, when it's a process question again around getting quotes for this. And this is what we struggle with often, is when do we initiate the procurement process? So I don't know if this is a question for yourself or Mr. Lewicki or Mr. DeBlanco, but if we wanted to move forward with this project, could council say, go out and get quotes based upon the quotes that we get? We'll decide, you know, tell us how much it is, and we'll decide if we fund it at that point. Because I am confident that some of these numbers could come in cheaper, but we're not going to know that until we get through a procurement process. So this is that whole chicken and egg scenario that we go through quite often.
Through the mayor, the best process for this would be for us to have a number for design, for our consultants to give us a good thorough design, which then we can base upon go through our procurement process afterwards. That design though would also, in between there, we would have to have a good detailed design but then also, like you said, go through the regulatory approval processes before we get into a construction type phase. And those permitting processes can take time. So I would be hesitant to say that it would be a design build in 1 year. I would be more of a design, get our permits in place and our regulatory approvals in place, and then I construct the final year.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's the answer I expected because that's the route that we're going with this. The last thing that popped into my mind is not far away downstream, we have some friends, Castor canadensis, beavers, right? And so that'll be another thing that would have to be contemplated with this, And I know that our friends at Cheyenne Tree Farm have, you know, also the same waterway or ish, have had, you know, beaver concerns and beaver issues as well. So, you know, that compounds into the design and thought process around, you know, this throw culvert in, throw dirt, move across it kind of idea. So anyways, I pulled it off the agenda because I wanted to talk about the process. I wanted to have you remind me and us around, you know, maybe a process where we look at a design build, because if we were gonna go that way with other pieces. So that's what I wanted to say and the answers I wanted to get, Mayor. So thank you.
You good?
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chartrand, for the presentation, the answers to the questions here. So with that, I'll look for a motion from member of council to receive the report as information as recommended in our agenda package. Councilman Newkirk, would you care to make that motion for information?
Yep, I would be pleased to make that motion, Mayor.
Thank you. What's on the screen there for you, please? Councilor, please proceed when you're ready.
I would move that the November 14th report, our 2023 report, pathway and crossing options from 63rd Street to Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate your questions prior to the motion. Discussion on the motion from members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote? Would you please vote on the motion before you, please? And that carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Mr. Chartrand, thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that. Welcome back to council. We'll see you next time, I'm sure. Thank you. Next on our agenda is 6.5, naming a park, Centreville Park. Mr. Wong, I believe you're presenting this evening on this report. Well, I gotta have it presented first, then we'll have discussion and we can go from there. Your microphone's on, sir. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present a report for the naming of the Centreville Park and the application that we received to rename this temporary Centreville Park at the corner of 52nd Avenue and 50th Streets. It's attached in the council package on the map there. And as I mentioned, the park has a temporary name, Centreville Park already, and this is to make it official. Centreville Park is the official name for the parcel, and according to the council naming policy, and in the event of a proposed renaming of a park, so administration will basically evaluate the procedures and the naming criteria, and if it is compliant, administration will prepare a report for council for approval. And because the name Centreville is identified as City of Beaumont's downtown, and is the name of the council's approved Centreville area redevelopment plan, and it is also a temporary name since 2015, and that is why the naming administration committee recommended to council to approve this name as a permanent name to the city park in the downtown. So, and also for the information, this administration is undertaking beautification projects on this location, and hence that is why they want to have this official name and prepare for the signage. And the signage would be bilingual. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Appreciate the presentation. Members of council, questions or comments or concerns or thoughts on the presentation? Councilor Markov Swain, Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thoughts, and we'll have a motion here. So I'll move that council move into closed session at 7:47. pursuant to Section 17 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Thank you, Counselor. Madam Clerk, this is okay to do right now, right? I believe it's my understanding. Thank you for clarifying, just for my procedure. Discussion on the motion from members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion to move in camera on this particular topic? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Please, all guests who are non-administration, please clear the room for our closed session, and we'll invite you back in when our closed session is ceased and we will return back to our open session. We're live. Thank you very much, Ms. Mead. We are now back live after our closed session. The first question I need to ask the administration on this report for the naming of Centreville Park. If council were to decide to receive the report's information, are there any implications negatively or positively by not naming the park this evening as the report was suggested from administration? I'll put the mic on for you, gentlemen. Your mic is on there, please. Thank you.
Through the mayor, there would be no real consequences to waiting and for the timing of the sign being installed. The worst case would be that we could put up the frame for the sign and wait until the name has been chosen and built, get the sign built.
So no real downside by delaying, just give us a chance to do some other things in the realm of naming.
Yeah,
You, Mr. Yuan, wish to comment?
Or use the temporary Centreville Park because it's the current name, so we can.
It can stay in
continue to
place.
use that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Having said that, just now I'm opening the floor to members of council for comments or questions on the Centreville Park report. I'll go to Councilor Swain first. Sam?
Yeah, thanks. And maybe I'll try to buy a little bit of time for admin to try to come up with a motion. But
that's fine.
Generally, I mean, super excited about Centreville Park, well, the park in Centreville, I should say. But I think there is an opportunity here to recognize, one or individual who's contributed significantly to Beaumont. So I'd like to see that discussion occur within council and within the community. I recognize we have a naming policy that is slightly outdated, and so at some point when we're ready, I'd like to move a motion to bring that back, to update that and focus an opportunity for this to name this park after a deserving individual. I would say I think we're okay to call it Parc Centreville now. I wouldn't want us to spend any money on a sign. So if you want to do the frame without the plaque, fine. We will be reminded of that if we change that. So yeah, I don't think there's any concern with accepting this park moving forward. I would just ask that we could move this process relatively quickly, given the fact that we have some other recent examples around there. So yeah, I'll defer. I see there's a few other questions, but yeah, look forward to making a motion on that one.
So what I'll probably do is I'll go to Councilor Telbus in a moment. I'll come back and make a motion to accept this report as information, cover off that part of our agenda, and we'll come back to a potential motion on our naming policy and how it could be updated to provide us with the opportunity to look at, as Councilor Goswami mentioned a moment ago, look at naming the park after an individual at some point in the future. We have to adjust our naming policy. So we'll come back to that. Councilor Telbus, I'll go to you, then I'll come back for my own motion to move this report.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I just want to clarify, again, the intentions are there, but I don't want to word it, and I think you worded it appropriately, naming it after an individual as opposed to an accomplished or recognized individual. I just want to keep that platform open so that there's options.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I'll wait to Madam Clerk Madam Clerk, you have something you want to add to the conversation before I make a motion to accept for information? If I can.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we need to accept the report for information. We would only accept it for information if we weren't going to take further action, but it sounds like council is wanting to direct administration to update the policy. So I do have a potential motion. No need to double the motions, but.
If that saves a step, I'm totally fine with that. Probably I just we didn't make a decision. So decision was to receive information. We don't have to do that. One less step I'm fine with that. So we'll wait, Madam Clerk, to put the motion on the screen in a moment here. Councilman Goswami, I'll have you make that motion when you have a chance to review it and make sure it's what you're looking for. And then we can discuss the motion.
Actually, there is
Mr. Wong.
Actually, there is maybe another option is because council can always rename a park. So if council desires, you can approve the name for the Centreville Park. And then if there is another opportunity to rename it to another name, so there is always that process, because like for example, tonight we are renaming a temporary park to a permanent name. So this is a renaming application. So council has the authority to, you know, rename a park at any time. So there is that process, and this is in the current policies already. So that is this option for council.
Right, just to be clear then, so we can leave it as is, as a temporary name, no problem, or we can make it an official name and change it later anyhow, which is okay.
Yeah.
But I agree with
There are
Councilman
no-
Goswing, we want to spend any money on, in case we are considering renaming it in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months down the road, why spend any money on any signage? I think we're clear on that, so I'm fine leaving it as a temporary name. I see no harm in leaving it as a temporary name personally, but if someone wants to make that motion and make it a permanent name, you can do that, but I won't, well, I would prefer to leave it as temporary, just to make things easier for us. So appreciate the comments, Mr. Wong, just to clarify what our options are. Always good to have those options clarified. Councilman Goswing, I believe the motion is on the screen before you, if you have a chance to review it before you want to make it. Oh, sorry, your mic is now on, sir.
Yeah, so I think that this is certainly step one, right? I think we need to update the council naming policy, and that the motion there is appropriate. We can get into timing or not, but I think there's a second part here that, and I'm not sure how we would word it, but you know, there's an opportunity here to recognize an individual, and you know, I think, you know, as I'm speaking on the fly here, which is always dangerous, you know, I think you'd want to give Beaumontonians an opportunity to know that we're considering this, right? And so to make it aware that, hey, here's currently Centreville Park, we're looking to rename it. You know, I'd hate for us to just, you know, just go off, you know, someone who has found this link on our naming policy to submit this. Like, is there a way that we can make this aware that we're kind of going through this and to submit an application or something like that? How nervous does that make people feel? I don't want to turn this into, you know, this. It's not a competition, like, and so like this is obviously a meaningful thing, but I want to make sure that people are aware. I'd hate for us to come up with a name of like, oh, if I knew, then I would have nominated X, right? So is there a way that we could think about talking through that?
Ms. Raymond, your mic's on.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff-Swain. I would say that you would probably want to put any additions to the naming reserve list on hold while you were doing that naming, the review on that policy. I've heard tonight that you would like to look at programs for other ways to do maybe commemorative memorializations. And that would be something else that we would be able to look at as well and be able to come back to that. But I think once the naming policy review will have a public engagement component to that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we would definitely be working with our friends in communications to publicize that this was an opportunity, that this does exist, and that they're welcome to submit these different things and provide that opportunity so that people would know and raise awareness.
So Madam Clerk, is it appropriate to potentially for Sam to amend his motion to include the moratorium on any further names being added? Is that necessary, or is it an operational procedural thing we can do behind the scenes? Madam Clerk, how best to proceed?
I feel that's a procedural matter because council is the one that that ultimately approves the naming. So it's in council's discretion. So we don't need to formalize a moratorium, and there may be extenuating circumstances. So perhaps not to tie council's hands too tightly. I think that's good general direction as Ms. Raymond has outlined. And I think this motion would provide us with the direction we need to get that process started. If Councillor Monkoff-Swain is comfortable with that, he could move the motion. If not, I'm happy to help make other changes.
Yeah, and so, sorry, from a process perspective, this comes back in front of us, and we'll get into the timing in a second. But this comes back in front of us, and at that point, whether we need to direct further work, I mean, it sounds like you're already there, Ms. Raymond. So I'm comfortable with 98% of the language in the motion. Let me just challenge a little bit on the timing. So I understand that, you know, other municipalities have recently updated theirs. Does this piece here, does this include engagement by quarter two, or would this come back to us and then we still need to go out and do engagement?
Oh, Ms. Raymond, your mic is now on.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Moncuff-Swain again. Often, I think we always like to maybe go with reports with options, and I don't really want to be one that's going to throw out a different motion out, but perhaps maybe the motion actually is that by the end of the first quarter of 2024, administration prepare a report on options for updating the names policy and providing the commemorative memorial program, whatever we're going to call it. And we would do that then by that first quarter 2024, and then you would direct us on how to proceed with that. We would have that engagement plan all laid out and everything else that we would be undertaking with that work. And then we could decide on the timeline for completion.
Yeah, personally for me, I think that makes a lot more sense, and then that gives us the second quarter to do any engagement based on that. So I'm not sure if you made too many friends with your administration colleagues there, Ms. Raymond, but I'll take it. If you're okay, I'll make the motion.
Yes, I have a question. Once you make the motion, we go right ahead, whenever you're ready.
So I'll move that by the end of the first quarter of 2024, administration prepare a report on options for updating the commemorative names policy and program.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you please speak your motion if you care to any further? You're welcome to at this point.
Yeah, I won't belabor it. I think it's clear that the old one is outdated, and there's a lot of things that we need to consider in 2023 that in 2008 wasn't considered. So looking forward to getting the update and moving forward with some opportunities to commemorate some well-deserved individuals.
I appreciate the comment. I concur that the naming policy is way out of date and needs to be updated for all the reasons Ms. Raymond had outlined. My only question, administration, is its capacity. I know we're all busy, we're slammed. Are we comfortable with the time frame? I know it's probably too soon in many ways, but I would prefer to have in the first quarter if we can as well too. But just a quick question on capacity, if you can enlighten us on the workload this may involve. I'm sure how much work this is going to entail. I have no idea, but if you could give us a little bit of enlightenment on the capacity, please.
I will say that respectfully, the capacity is fairly limited. We are still working through the LUB engagement that needs to happen, and that is the same. Well, Joannis's team will also be working on that. So we've got a couple of major projects that we're going to be doing at the beginning of this year, along with other work planned, like an offsite levy update, those sorts of things. So this is going to be some additional work on the team that we weren't preparing for. But
thank you for the explanation. I do appreciate that. Councilor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick clarification. Is the commemorative names policy and program the same as council's naming policy, or we are looking at one and the same? We don't have two different policies we're looking at?
Ms. Raymond?
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, they are two different things. We do not currently have a commemorative memorial program where you could name a tree or a park bench or something, but I do think it's an add-on that would go very nicely with the naming policy. So the naming policy exists, and this is an add-on on the commemorative memorial.
So for that, the motion is just a little off then. It's options for updating a policy we don't have yet.
And developing a commemorative names program.
Yeah.
Or memorial program.
Yeah, that
friendly
makes sense
amendment
to me.
Yep, good enough. Thank you. I do remember we did at one point have a legacy program where people could buy a bench or something. I saw a brochure in Beaumont a few years ago, but it kind of never went anywhere. So yeah, that does incorporate that type of program. So, okay. Oh, Councilor Penrod, I see your hand go up there. You have the floor, sir.
I just want to make sure before we vote on the motion that we've captured Councilor Barnhart's last point, that we're saying council naming policy, options for updating the council naming policy, and developing a commemorative names program.
Okay, we'll just wordsmith that. And I'll have Sam just sign off on it before we go any further in our discussion.
And that should be friendly too.
No, it's okay, we'll get it right. Not a problem. In the meantime, Steve, you have the floor, sir.
Not to belabor it, but Isn't it the municipal naming policy or is it council naming policy? What's the correct name for it? I just want to triple check that as we're
I'm looking at the website right now and it's council naming.
council
policy.
naming policy 31R2. Yes. okay,
Correct.
Great, perfect.
Okay.
Triple checking.
Good clarification. Appreciate that. Okay, we first met a couple, 3 times. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. Sam, final look before I call for the vote. See no further discussion from anybody else. You good? All right, council. See no further discussion. I will ask you to vote on the motion before you. And that passed unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. Thank you, administration. We look forward to that report coming in the first quarter of 2024. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving right along on our agenda here. We are now at 6.8, motion following notice. That's been taken care of. I believe, Sam, you got an answer back from administration. Moving then on to you go to councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. Are there any councillor inquiries this evening from members of council? Seeing none, or responses or reports? Also seeing none, we'll move on then. CU update. Oh, sorry. Councillor Telebus. Nathan, I didn't see your number there. I apologize. You have the floor, sir.
No, just looking.
Okay, sorry. What did I miss here? You speak to it? Okay, sorry. Okay. Motion. Oh, I thought it was I had it wrong. My mistake. We should go back to 6.8. My mistake on the agenda. I apologize for that. Motion following notice. Councilman Goswami, improving online program registration. I apologize, Sam. I thought it was an inquiry, not a motion. My mistake. So please make your motion, Sam, then please speak to it at your convenience. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. It was initially an inquiry and now it's a motion. That's why you got
That's what threw me off. Thank you.
So I will, I'll move that by the end of the first quarter of 2024, administration provide a report on options for improving the online registration process for community program, as well as community programming, as well as options for increasing or improving access to swimming lessons. And I'll just speak briefly.
Yes.
I'll welcome our 2 new councillors to one of our scariest days as council members when community programming goes out. You'll get your phones ready, make sure they're charged. This is tough, right? We don't have enough space. The pool's not big enough for swimming lessons, all that sort of stuff. I understand that, but I think there are tweaks that we can make to improve that process. And effectively what we're looking at here is asking administration to take a look at how we can improve the online registration process. I know that's been very frustrating for many people. There's a back-end website issue, and so that's important to flag here. But specifically swimming lessons and just how that programming works. Other municipalities do it differently, and so I wanted us to take a look at that to see if we can do that any better and see if we can improve that moving forward. So that's what the ask is, and I hope that you support me on this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate the reasoning for the motion and the expectation going forward. Discussion from members of council on the motion. Notice the motion before you. Councillor Van Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor on this one.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Monkoff Swain for putting this forward. I'm happy to support this motion. The latter half of it, improving access to swimming lessons. One of the exercises I think that the community would benefit from is understanding what space is actually available for swimming lessons and what is used for swimming lessons. So anything that can be done as part of this to show on the schedule what's available and what's being used just in a real definitive way, I think would be helpful. I hearken back to Councillor Miller moving that the ice time be put back to the Sport Rec Culture Committee. That allowed administration to have a second look at ice time allocations. It went to the Sport Rec Culture Committee and then came back to council. Lots of eyes on that. Couldn't be any more transparent in that process. Maybe that fits here, maybe it doesn't, but I just know that process of the ice time allocation review really helped the community understand what the limitations were. So thanks, Councillor Monkoff Swain, for putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion or comments, questions from member of council on the notice of motion before us? Seeing none, with that, I'll ask council to vote on notice of motion on the screen before you. Carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. Thank you, council, for bringing that forward. Next on our agenda, I will now go to 7.0, councilor inquiries, responses, or reports. Are there any councilor inquiries this evening? Or reports or responses? All right, seeing none, appreciate that. Move on to our next agenda item, which is, oh, we got CEO update? No problem. Okay, all right. CEO Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, members of council and the public. Got a brief update for you. One of the requests from council was to provide more regular updates on the service transformation initiative. So I'll provide some of that tonight, and we will do more robust updating as we move along and during the budget workshop. So as part of our ongoing work to streamline service delivery to residents, businesses, and visitors, the city has launched a project called Connected Community. By building a better website, modernize our online payment systems, and creating a central office to handle incoming calls and emails, we will enhance the citizen experience and make city services more accessible. These enhancements are also designed to free up time for our employees to spend doing work in other areas, which will also improve service delivery. Business process mapping, optimization, internal discovery will remain the focus for the project team until Q2 of 2024. We've been in the process of gathering tons of data and touch points and seeing all the old systems that are creating the confusion for our residents, our website being one of them. The public procurement process for the website development agency is complete, and the contract was awarded the first week of November. Public engagement for the website scheduled for Q1 2024. Ongoing feedback from the Beaumont Citizens Focus Group, which was formed in 2021 to test proposed digital solutions. So we're still looking at that. We've got approximately 250 Beaumont residents volunteering to participate in this tester group. Project team called a digital accessibility review conducted to determine the current state. And that's what I talked about earlier about how everything lines up and doesn't line up and how things have been bolted on in the past. So this work will assist in aligning with key actions as defined in the Belonging in Beaumont Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Framework for the development of the new website. Broadband ribbon cutting took place this morning, a very exciting event for those not plugged into that, pun intended. This puts Beaumont on the map as a capability of providing the fastest internet service in Western Canada. This is hardwired to every house and business. We actually have customers that are live now. They estimate they've got 2% left of the drilling work. So we had a function this morning, you can see, with the federal, provincial, and municipal dignitaries, along with the Alberta Broadband Network. If you want to know any more information about that, feel free to go on the Primus website or the ABN website. But it's certainly a game changer for the city of Beaumont. Recreation, pretty big turnout for November 11th. This city continually displays support for our veterans, and that's to be complimented for sure. We're estimating over 1,200 people were in the CCBCC in the field house, and that included up around the track, and just an outstanding event. Beaumont Small Business Treasure Hunt was a great success. Top 3 prizes have been awarded. We're planning on making this an annual tradition during Small Business Week. It allows people to get out and about and into these businesses and to see what's going on in our community. The Economic Development team is also in preparation for the 2024 International Conference of Shopping Centers, which is in Whistler. So we'll send one of our staff members to this conference. It's one of the largest in North America, where we have local landlords and developers and retail people that are going there and looking for new places to build. So we're actively out there looking for that non-residential growth. Elementary school presentations were conducted by Infrastructure. This is a great tool to talk about waste reduction and recycling. These kids really learn this early, and we find they go home and teach their parents. So it's been very well received and good for Infrastructure to get out there. St. Fidel Neighborhood Rehab. Did you want to talk about this one, Aaron, and say that it's complete finally? That was the bane of his existence and the staff for this summer. Obviously, there's some work that needs to be done in the spring. That's part of investing in our community. If we don't do that work, things just fall apart. And there are communities all over the place that things are falling apart. We don't want to be one of those. Juno Park project included regrading and the culvert installed for proper site drainage, and it's complete. Obviously, again, more minor deficiencies would be expected. Centreville Park, which we talked about tonight, development of the site is ongoing. The next phase of the project will be the installation of the shade structures and the site furnishings, along with the sandblasting of the logo. The etching is in, from what I understand, the outline is in, and now the rest of the work is looking to be completed before the end of this month. Which has been great for the weather. Community and social development, Christmas Elves hamper intake started today. FCSS taking all intakes. Beaumont residents must self-refer. So if it's something that you want to take advantage of, please go to our website and register or register at FCSS. Family violence prevention awareness event is tonight at the library. No registration is required. The clothesline project will be displayed in front of the library on 50th Street. T-shirts hanging on the line have messages with important statements about family violence. And speaking of corporate analytics, which I opened the update, as part of the digital master plan, CAT developed Beaumont Security Information Management Plan. So they've conducted planning and some tabletop exercises for around cybersecurity. The plan is vital to Beaumont's information technology and risk management program. So the internal document guides in managing how we respond to these types of events and how do we mitigate risks. So if you wanted to see any more information on there, there is a website address for you. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO Schwartz. Appreciate that very much. Very thorough update on a number of very good topics. So any question for CEO Schwartz on his report this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to, Councillor Barnhart, you have a question? Oh, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just reminded me when you said the Small Business Week, Mr. Schwartz, I heard of a couple of residents really enjoying that. And I happened to capture it, and sent it on. And I was kind of surprised there wasn't more talk about it. So I'm glad to hear you're going to be doing it again next year. And I think maybe, we can help you a bit more with the publicity, even ourselves getting that word out. But it was appreciated by those that took part in it. And I think it's really good for the businesses to have that participation. So it was something that I wanted to add my kudos to for that.
Thank you. That was the first edification, and as we always do, try and improve on it. I can't remember how many participants we had. Somebody probably on this call will know that, but it was actually quite high. So people, they loved it.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. All right, see no further questions for CEO Schwartz. Next on our agenda is item 9, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening from members of council? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, we have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And looking to Ms. Bajaya, she has a motion ready for me, I believe.
It's okay, Madam Clerk, take your time.
Okay. So thank you very much for the help from administration on trying to figure out how to best do this. Not something that I tend to do is suspend the rules. So I would like to make a motion that the rules under section 141 to 143 of meeting procedures bylaw 101422 be suspended to allow for debate on a motion regarding a report on options for a seasonal tree in Centreville.
Thank you, Councillor. So before Councillor Barnhart speaks to her motion, Madam Clerk, may I ask, is it appropriate for Councillor Barnhart to explain why she wants to suspend the rules? Or is that, I'm just, my first time doing one in a while, so refresh my memory, please. Madam Clerk.
It would be, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be appropriate for Councillor Barnhart to give some indication as to why she feels this item is time sensitive. But we just want to refrain from debating the actual motion. This is a 2/3 vote required, so we do need 2/3 of council to agree to suspend the rules. If that motion passes, then we would move to the motion that Councillor Barnhart wishes to put forward.
And to be clear, my math says 5 out of 7 is considered 2/3.
That is correct. Your math is excellent.
Okay, I did look it up before the meeting started to be sure. I wanted the credit for it. Councillor Barnhart, please, would you proceed?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for indulging me here. The reason for the timing of this is, again, a seasonal tree, and generally speaking, as soon as it starts to get dark after the changes in the times, we start to see people putting on their Christmas lights and their seasonal lights, and it's not only Christmas that's celebrated with the Festival of Lights, but there's other religions as well that are celebrating that particular festival. And I think we all just crave lighting when it gets dark. And the timing of this is that I would like to give the administration time to proceed if the motion is successful.
Okay, discussion on the motion from Councillor Barnhart to suspend the rules to proceed with the motion this evening. Seeing no questions from any members of council. Council, would you please vote on the motion before you to suspend the rules? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. That clears the way for Councillor Barnhart to put a motion on before us and be able to speak to it this evening and debate it and vote on it tonight, is my understanding. So when you're ready, Councillor Barnhart, once the motion is up on the screen, please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, council, for allowing me to at least put this forward for our consideration. And I don't do it lightly. The motion is up there for you to see. I did do an inquiry on this particular issue last council meeting. I was rather surprised myself at the price that came back. But of course, we know that the administration is going to have to provide extra resources, and it's difficult to get a price until you actually put the time and energy into going forward with this. I would like it to be a whole lot less of a cost than that, but that's why the motion is reading up to 40,000 from municipal reserves. I appreciate this is a bad time of year, budget time, to be asking these kinds of questions. That being said, I think we have an opportunity. There's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, and it may be that the way this motion is written, it allows for perhaps not one humongous big tree in the middle of a park, but something else more modest. And I was thinking this is more of a pilot year, just to get something into that beautiful park that we're now really wanting to animate and make it more vibrant. So my intention here is not to spend $40,000 if we can avoid it, but it's to allow the administration the time and the resources to come back with options. And given the timing, the motion doesn't say come back with options. And that would be kind of a question I would maybe ask to the administration, if this is even possible to be done in the timeline that we have. And if that's appropriate for me to lead with that question. I don't know if that's, because we haven't had much of a debate or a discussion. With the administration, we basically had the answer came back in an inquiry. So perhaps I could ask that question first.
Sure,
and
let's
then other
proceed with
members may
Councillor
answer
Barnhart.
the
You ask the question administration, then I'll go to my first councillor with questions. Councillor McGough-Swain, after you ask the question you just alluded to, and then we can go on and go from there. So please proceed with your question to
So then
administration.
the question to the administration would be, what do you see the process being if this motion were to pass?
Mr. Studer, the mic is on for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. That number, just for reference, we looked at that a couple of ways very quickly. The two concerns were pointed out in the inquiry regarding time to get this done, if we could even source what we were looking for, plus we hadn't made a decision as to what it would look like. That $40,000 was, for example, for a 20-foot artificial tree pre-lit, no decorations, plus the install. So that was kind of the ballpark. We're going to be hard pressed to get it. They're running out of availability. So if this was to pass, we would have to act very quickly if we were going to go that route. I know after speaking with Director Lewicki, there was a plan to light up the existing or the soon to be installed, if not installed, shade structure frames, if you will. So they will be lit. Another example was to light existing trees surrounding the park, and that still to do all that properly was quoted about $40,000. It's not inexpensive to do this sort of stuff on this sort of scale. A 24-foot tree, of course, is still arguably, is it the right size? I don't know. It may look small still in that space. It's still quite an open space. And again, that's just the number we threw out. My main concern was around the logistics of trying to get something sourced. Live trees, we don't even want to go down that road. It looks like the pricing for
You said
something.
live trees are not.
It's way too expensive to get something of that kind of size, and then what's required to install it, sort of thing. So
And have you also considered in potentially several trees rather than one big tree?
no, Not as far as like you're thinking a bunch of smaller trees? Yeah.
And I think to fit in kind of with the theme that's there, because it is the amphitheater and things like that. So
I guess my answer would be if this were to pass and we had that sort of budget to work within, we'd look at see what we could do. If that flexibility, that discretion was allowed to us to make it happen. We may be limited just in what we can source and what would work, but I'll leave that with council to decide.
Mr. Lewicki has something to say.
Please.
To the mayor, through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, the other consideration that we need to consider here is the ability for these to be tampered with, for them to be, so for instance, if we use smaller trees, what stops them from being thrown out onto 50th Street after one evening of kids having fun, or bigger trees having the stability? So these are things that we also have to consider. Placement, how do we anchor them? Obviously, we don't want to drill holes in our new plaza for a purpose we're not totally sure on a permanent solution yet. So obviously there could be locations in the grassed area or something like that. But I think it's important that we have to consider the security of these trees or fixtures and the safety of the public. I just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
I have some council willing to make.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this forward. I love the concept. To me, it just makes me a tad nervous on how quickly we're trying to do this. First of all, I'm not sure why it's municipal reserves. Surely we could squeak this out into capital, but I won't debate that yet. It is middle of November here, and this one here just talks about getting a tree. It doesn't talk about any decorations that need to come with it or anything like that. So I'm not sure we can pull it off. Like, I'd love to do it. I see the concept, I can see the vision, I can see the community getting around it. But I think we need to take our time and do this right and talk about it at budget and direct administration at budget to look at sourcing this. And, there's opportunities for people to donate and all that sort of thing. And I think we need to take our time to get it right. I see the vision, but I think if we went ahead with this now, it's probably going to end up disappointing and maybe lose the jump that we're hoping to get from it. So that's where my gut goes is to wait for budget and then kind of go through that process. The other thing that I just want to flag is, this is obviously related to a specific part of our community, for lack of a better term. I think there's an EDI kind of lens that needs to be looked at here. There are some things that we support and some things that we don't. And I know you're not saying support this and not others, but my main concern is are we rushing this? And for the short amount of time to get administration to pull this off, I think we maybe take our time and do it right for 2024. So that's just where I lean. I'll wait to see where everyone else is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments are very similar to Councillor Munkoff-Swain's. I like the idea and I like the concept of doing it. I just don't want to rush into it and then potentially be disappointed with what we end up with. And I think we do need to take our time just to look at other options. As you mentioned, potentially it's not one tree, potentially it's multiple trees, just to see what that is. Where do we, I think you probably also have to consider, where do we keep the tree after all those things. So just to make sure that we take our time. I also think that if we take our time and ask administration to kind of focus on it, potentially we could partner with the events committee, or not the committee anymore, I guess, the events people, and potentially do something with Brighten Up Beaumont next year with it and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to kind of really come out with a bang around that time of year, if we can do some event around it or something like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Newkirk, followed by Councillor Telebos, and maybe me. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I'm in agreement with my colleagues speaking against the motion. Thanking you, Councillor Barnhart, for creating the discussion. I was happy to support suspension of the normal rules so that we could have this conversation. Only thing that I'll add to the comments already made is that, again, by not rushing into this and by entering into a plan for 2024, we'll actually potentially unlock some more opportunity in the community. And you actually spoke to that yourself, to make this a more inclusive event even. So we're already through, just through the celebrations of Diwali, for example. And so by, again, backing up the timing process, we may be able to really optimize this for the whole community.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, the keywords I've heard so far are rush and opportunity and community, and I think that we need to embrace all of those comments that were previously made. There's certainly examples on how to just talk from a budget standpoint on how to reduce that 40 down to 0. There's trees in this community that people want to remove from their yards and otherwise would cut down. My mother-in-law just cut one down in Edmonton. It would have been great for here. I'm not saying we haul it from Edmonton, but there's trees in this community that people in their front yard don't want. We can figure out that. Stettler does this every year, and the tree is donated from the community. The crane comes from the community. The chainsaws come from the community. These are all companies donating their time. The kids watch it go down the road. They watch it becomes a community event. And then the tree goes up in the center of town. Notwithstanding all of the logistical things that Mr. Lewicki, you forgot a few, hook a chain on and try and drag it over, light it on fire, spray paint it. These are all things that have been experienced in other communities, but all those logistical things are real concerns. So 40,000 can become 0, and I think that's an important part. And the community involvement could be dialed right up for some kind of an event. It's just too soon and rushing right now, so I won't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebos. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar to everyone's comments here. I support the vision, but given the price and the planning right now, much like how I struggle to buy roses even on Valentine's Day, I don't know that it's the right time to be purchasing it just from a cost perspective. So a little more planning put behind it, and I think it would be a great decision.
Thank you, Councillor. I will jump in for one final comment if you wish, or Councillor Mara, did you want to maybe have a comment of your own first?
Okay.
Councillor.
If I may say, I appreciate all of what's been said. It's been going through my own thoughts as well. I don't usually go down in flames, like 6 to 1, but I'm glad to do it. I think the vision is there. I don't think anyone disagrees with the vision. It's just how do we do it? And that's usually the way. So I'm all prepared to collaborate. You'll hear it again from me. So I look forward to hearing it in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm also leaning on the no side. I think the visual of a huge tree just brings back memories when I was a kid. And I think it would be a phenomenal community event in many ways. Not everybody celebrates Christmas, but many people do. And as we can try and be good to everybody and try and balance the load for everybody, I think it's important to include that as well too. The visual would be fantastic. Timing, I think, is tight. And also our CEO update also talked about some additional work being done on the concrete at the end of November. That may interfere with the idea of getting a tree there. So I'm leaning on the no side. But if you want an extra 1 vote just to make you feel better, I can do that. I just can't get there. Sorry. I wanted to help out, but I just can't get there. So, all right. Thank you for all the comments, councillors. I appreciate that. So any final, we have to vote unless you want to withdraw your motion, but we can vote if you want to have a vote. We can do that. Your option to also withdraw the motion if you care to. That's also an option for you, councillor. Which do you prefer to do? Councillor Barnard wishes to withdraw her motion. I appreciate that. And again, I do think the vision was there. Timing is not, but I think this issue could come back through other channels. Even get a local sponsor to come on board, and maybe a local developer might want to come on board and do a tree. One never knows where this could lead, but I think it's a great discussion this evening. Thank you, council, for having this discussion, and with the motion being withdrawn, we'll move on to the balance of our agenda. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Next on our agenda is adjournment, but before we do, oh, Madam Clerk.
We have one other notice of motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that, my mistake. Sorry. So that is Councillor Metellibus. Nathan, your notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to put forward the motion here that by the end of January, at the November 2023 council meeting, I will move that by the end of January 2024, administration prepare a report on any possible options for enabling the city to collect fees from properties with additional dwelling units for the use of municipal services, things such as facilities and infrastructure, and that the report include information on how the city ensures equity between various ratepayers in terms of fees for municipal services.
Thank you, Councillor. I apologize. I was not aware of a second motion. I was only aware of the one before the meeting started. So I apologize for that oversight. But thank you for your notice of motion. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for bringing it to my attention. And having said that, are there any further notices of motion? CO Schwartz. Oh, okay, no problem. So are there any further notices of motion, members of council, on item 9 of our agenda this evening? Seeing none, I have 2 quick comments before we adjourn this evening. Again, as CO Schwartz mentioned, Remembrance Day service was very well attended, almost 1,200 people. I was thrilled to have as many councilors who were there, members of the community, veterans in Beaumont. There's more than you think there are. And people I didn't know were veterans. I saw them for the first time, and I've seen them by face, not by name, and they were veterans. And the service was extremely well done by our city administration. It was respectful, it was tasteful, and it was very effectively delivered. So, and I was also pleasantly surprised to see as many children there this year. And I define kids under 10 or 12. There were a lot of kids there, and they wore their poppies, and they were polite, they were quiet. It was amazing. I thought it was a very good comment on our community. And that particular event was very well attended and very well done. And thank you to everybody involved with that. Lastly, as CO Schwartz mentioned, we had the 10 gig ribbon cutting this morning. Members of council, most were all there, and I do appreciate that attendance. We had Minister Glubish from the province of Alberta, Minister of Infrastructure, Technology and Innovation, my mistake there. He said some words. Mike Lake was there, our MP, our MLA was there. Members of the press were there as well too. So it was a great event. We are 25 or 30% connected with the 10 gig fiber optic and be fully connected by the end of this year. So that's a huge advantage for us competitively speaking, and we're going to be banging the drum on that real hard going forward to tell companies to come to Beaumont. If you need connectivity, we have it here. That's a huge up for us, and it'll help our bottom line with our tax base, which is always a concern for us going forward. So again, great event put on by administration today, with communications, especially with the event today. Well done. Thank you all for coming this evening. We got some good work done today. And with that, we are adjourned 8:52. Thank you.